You know that feeling, right? That complete and utter exhaustion after talking to a certain person. It's this mental drain, this frustration. It feels like you've just run a marathon you never even signed up for. Seriously, dealing with difficult people can feel like a full-time job you can't quit. But what if you could? What if there was a way to quit that marathon for good? Well, let's dive into how you can build an architecture of silence that actually protects your peace. And this right here is the whole game. I know, it can be a tough pill to swallow. We all want to believe that if we just explain ourselves, if we just make them see our side, they'll finally get it. But you have to realize, some games are just unwinnable. The only way to win isn't to play their game better, it's to stop playing altogether. This isn't about some kind of magic trick, it's about strategy. So before we can build a new strategy, we have to get really clear on the game we've been playing without even realizing it. I call it the drama trap. You know what I'm talking about, that painful, predictable cycle where you get pulled into these pointless arguments that just go in circles, and you're left feeling defeated, wondering, how did I end up here? Again. And here's the most important thing to get about these signs. These aren't just, parts of a bad conversation. For the other person, this is the point of the conversation. Every single one of these points is a feature, not a bug. Their goal isn't to find a solution or to understand you. It's to hook your attention and just completely drain your energy. Recognizing that pattern is the first real step to breaking free. Okay, so if their entire goal is to trap you, how do you actually get free? Well, it's not by trying to dismantle their trap piece by piece. It's by simply refusing to step into it in the first place. This right here is the big mindset shift. You have to stop focusing on their behavior, which, let's be honest, you can't control, and you start focusing entirely on your response, which you absolutely can control. Let's look at what this actually looks like in practice. Over here on the left, you've got the old way, the trap, justifying, arguing, explaining. Every single one of those actions is like pouring gasoline on their fire. But on the right, you've got the key. So instead of justifying, you just state. Instead of arguing, you disengage. And this is the big one, instead of rewarding their drama with your attention, you strategically withhold it. So how do we start building this new response? Let's talk about the first tool, and it tackles a super common mistake, one that honestly most of us make because we think we're being fair and reasonable. It's the trap of over-explaining. We have this deep-seated belief that if we just provide enough logic, enough context, enough reasons, they'll finally see our point of view. But that very instinct, that's the front door to the trap. This leads to something called self-justification fatigue. And I bet if you've ever felt it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's that deep, bone-deep weariness that comes from having to defend your choices to someone who isn't listening to understand you. They're listening for weaknesses. They're not looking for clarity. They are literally mining your explanation for loopholes to keep the argument going. So why does our attempt to be clear and reasonable backfire so badly? Well, it's because when you offer this long, detailed explanation for one of your boundaries, you're sending a subconscious message. You're basically signaling that your boundary is up for debate, that it's a proposal on the table, not a final decision. And the main takeaway here is so simple. A boundary is a statement, not an essay. So instead of saying, oh, I can't make it Saturday because, my cousin might be coming over and I haven't done laundry in 2 weeks, plus I'm just feeling really tired, which just gives them a million things to argue with, you simply say, I'm not available on Saturday. That's it. End of story. Every extra word you add is an invitation for them to negotiate, and your piece is absolutely non-negotiable. Okay, so we've learned to stop handing them the ammunition of over-explanation. But what about when they're actively trying to provoke you? Trying to start a fight out of thin air? This brings us to our second and honestly even more powerful tool, actively starving the drama of the one thing it needs to survive. This whole strategy is actually rooted in a really powerful psychological principle called behavioral extinction. Now, it sounds super clinical, I know, but the idea is incredibly simple. Any behavior that is no longer reinforced will eventually stop. And for a person who thrives on drama, your attention, whether it's positive or negative, is the ultimate reward. It's the dopamine hit they're searching for. When you react, you reward them. Take away that reward, and the behavior has absolutely no reason to continue. But let's be real for a second. That is so much easier said than done, right? How do you actually do this in the heat of the moment, when every single instinct you have is screaming at you to defend yourself or fight back against some totally unfair comment?
Here's a simple 3-step plan. First, you have to learn to identify the bait. Is it a little passive-aggressive comment, a loaded question? Once you see it for what it is, bait, you move to step 2, remove the reward. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be rude. It can be a simple, boring, one-word answer like, okay, or I see. It could even be a short pause before you change the subject. But the real key is step 3, consistency. Seriously, think of it like training a puppy. If it barks and you give it a treat every time, it learns to bark. If you consistently ignore the barking, it learns that barking gets it nothing. It is the exact same principle.
So, what happens when you start putting these two strategies together? You stop justifying your boundaries and you stop rewarding drama with your attention. What you're left with is this powerful, strategic silence. And it's in that silence that you finally find your peace. This is so powerful because it gets right to the heart of the whole thing. People who thrive on drama are basically performers. They're looking for an audience and ideally a co-star. When you calmly refuse to read your lines or even to sit in the audience and watch, the show gets incredibly boring for them. They'll eventually get tired of performing in an empty theater and go looking for a new stage. And the results of this? They're truly transformative. This isn't just about getting rid of a problem. It's about what you gain for yourself. You reclaim your time, your focus, your precious mental energy. You're not just putting up walls. You're building a sanctuary for your own mind. You take back control. And in doing that, you find a level of peace that can honestly change everything. So I'll leave you with this thought. By strategically changing your response, you're not just making a toxic person fade out of your life. You are actively creating a new space for yourself, a space that's filled with quiet and energy and freedom. The only question left is, what are you going to build in it?